So this is Scott, and he's from Pulse PEMF. Yeah. Does everyone here know each other? Other than, okay, Dr. North, Shiftwave, Art, Dr. Alexander, my name's Deb. This is Liz. Yeah, and him. Yeah. So, okay.
I'm part of the Institute. Wellness.
Gina, is Steve going to be joining or? Okay. No, Steve's not joining us? Steve is not joining? Okay. All right, cool.
How long would you like our introductions to be? 30 seconds, 60 seconds?
I say a minute, you know, yeah. Yeah, and then we have plenty of time. Yeah. And the other aspect of this is from plenty of time, our goal is to then look at the video that we're capturing and take that and be able to reutilize it. So
13 seconds.
And we are live. Okay. So let us know if you can hear us. That's a good start. My name's Deborah Doolin. I'm here with a wonderful group of people on Super Bowl Sunday. So go Super Bowl, and we'll find out who everybody's rooting for in a few minutes. But we want to take a little moment to just kind of introduce why we're here. We're here with Wellness for Life, and that is a group of individuals that is combining the mission that Art and Liz Still have put together, Art for Life, which is around Still for Life, Still for Life, to basically raise awareness around HATTR, which is a genetic form of amyloidosis. We're also combining the Wellness Institute, and we're here with Kim McGlower, the CEO of the Wellness Institute, to kind of bring those two opportunities together. I've got some slides here that keeps me on path, and we've got people in the background. The slide that we have up now is just thanking our sponsor, LifeWave, to thank them for bringing us all together. And I'm asking my people behind the scenes, Brandon, can you just give me a nod that we're on the same slide? Woohoo! All right, we've got that going on. So we're synced. We also have, I've kind of gone around the room sort of introducing a few people, but I'd like to take a second and just have everybody that's here in the roundtable introduce themselves and give us a chance to, say for ourselves who's in the room, introduce ourselves, who we're with, and then additionally, what interests us about this discussion, and then as well, who you think is going to win the Super Bowl or who you want to win the Super Bowl and why. So I'm going to start with ladies first, Kim. And we'll skip me and then I'll come back to myself. So, Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim McGlower, and I am the CEO of the Wellness Institute. I'm a biologist and an epidemiologist trained at Columbia University. And my interest is, the Institute's interest is optimal wellness, optimal health. And we have our own way of thinking about this. More importantly, that it's not just about medical studies and other sort, that we want to look at how do we support individuals? How do we support causes in terms of a disease that may not be well known and promoted? How do we support technologies that are not at the forefront or may not be well known yet, and help those companies actually do the work that they need to, and to partner with universities, with schools, with programs that can actually make a difference in the lives of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Kim. So, Super Bowl. You didn't get off that question. Oh, no. This is part of the fun. You're wearing Seahawk colors, kind of. Eagles, yeah. They're not contenders, unfortunately.
I'll go with Seahawk.
All right. And why?
Oh, no.
It's a green.
Excuse me?
Green.
Green.
Coordination. All right, going just around the
I
room.
thought, ladies first.
I got you. We started with ladies first. Well, I can speak for you. I was just going around the room at that point. Dr. Michael North. You know the drill.
Yeah, Dr. Mike North. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ShiftWave. I actually used to host TV shows here in the Bay Area. And on the shows, we would invent things early in the future and really forward-looking. On the show, the things that really mattered most to me were the ones that helped people. And so now this kind of reboot of my career is both solving the problem of, having been a TV host and burning out and knowing what that's like. And so how can I help regenerate myself, bring myself back into regulation, but then focus all of our design and engineering expertise on solving that problem. And so we've developed a platform, and I'll talk about it later. It just helps restore people's foundational wellness and bring them back into regulation.
Yeah.
Well, it's with the Super Bowl. I certainly want one team to win. And I'm a little biased because sometimes teams use ShiftWave, and then I really want them to win. So maybe I'll just put that aside because we don't really like to share who has them. But I will say I'm from the West Coast, and I have a lot of family in Seattle, so definitely rooting for the Seahawks.
Right on, yeah. So my name's Deborah Doolin, and I've been in the healthcare community for some time, and I work with the Wellness Institute. And like Kim said, the mission of the Wellness Institute is where my values lie. I believe that people from wherever our walk of life is, that we should have access to personalized and individualized care. And working in the healthcare community and the work that I've done over the years, starting with proteomics and genomics and, going into orthopedics and, all sorts of clinical work and then neuro, I've really come to the understanding that it's not a one-size-fits-all health answer. It just isn't. One person uses one particular therapy, and that works great for them, and it just doesn't work for the other person. Or a combination of therapies, multimodal care, and stacking of maybe something that's what we consider to be allopathic medicine, something that may be holistic medicine, something that may be what we're talking about today, wellness therapies, and all of those together provide a solution. But we don't get there unless we're educating, unless we're connecting with people, helping them understand, then forming access. And that's what matters most to me about this conversation. And what I love about these types of conversations is meeting great people. We've had a lot of opportunity to just spend time together and be in fellowship, and that is wonderful. So I might get a little teary when I think about that. I'm an emotional girl. So with that being said, who do I want to win the Super Bowl? Well, I lived in both New Hampshire. So the Patriots are, they've been a part of my love. I also lived in Seattle. So the Seahawks have been there in my world. But I like change, and the Patriots won quite a few Super Bowls. So I'm for this change. I'd like to see some Seahawks. Liz.
Oh, take it away. Hello. My name is Liz Still, and I don't have quite the credentials all these guys do, but I am a professional wife of 42 years to Art, and with 11 kids. Yeah, that alone is enough. We have 11 kids and 26, almost 28 grandkids. And Art was diagnosed in 2023 with amyloidosis. And so I'm here to be his biggest supporter. And we began Still for Life last April, with the whole mission of getting awareness out there, because we're just one family.
I'm Kevin Alexander. I'm a cardiologist at Stanford and a member of our amyloidosis center. I think, for me, I got into amyloidosis or interested in studying it probably about 10 to 15 years ago when I was training on the East Coast at Hopkins and Brigham and Women's in Boston, and really coming across a lot of patients who had ATTR amyloidosis, the hereditary form, and we diagnosed them late And at the time, there weren't any treatments that were effective at slowing down the progression. And so kind of thinking about something I wanted to build a career around, I saw a lot of unmet need around this particular disease and a lot of opportunity from the things that are starting to come out in clinical trials. And, I think the last 5 years or so, there's been a lot of advances and a lot of things that we can do for patients. We need to make sure that we can match that by diagnosing them early so they can get these treatments. And so, I think that takes a village, and it takes a lot of different stakeholders thinking together and thinking about it from different angles to make sure that we can diagnose as many people as possible. Because right now, I would say that for every person we diagnose, there's probably 3 or 4 that aren't diagnosed and don't have access to these treatments.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to the discussion today. And in terms of the Super Bowl, I would say, I don't have too strong allegiances to either, but I did live in Boston for some time. And my oldest daughter was born on Super Bowl Sunday when the Pats were playing the Falcons. And they came back 28-3 and won that Super Bowl.
Nice.
So we were in the hospital watching that game. So I have fun kind of nostalgia from that. So I'll go with the Patriots.
Nice. I like that. I still have love for the Patriots. All right. So thank you for that. And Art?
Thank you guys for inviting us out. No, my name's Art Still. Just a little background. Oh, you didn't know that? I'm hearing voices again. I'm originally from Camden, New Jersey. When I found out I had this ATTR and started going through the symptoms, one of the symptoms was peripheral neuropathy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I already knew I had it. I don't have that.
Tingly fingers, right? Tingly toes.
And so the thing is, that's what I'm saying as far as conveying the message and all. If it's real simple, when you're going, it makes it so much easier.
Agreed.
And contrast between me and Liz. Liz is more into the science.
Mm-hmm.
I got that football mind. Just tell me what I need to do. She want to know the science.
And that's what we're going to do, exactly that. And, I think the critical part here is, and that's why we bring everybody into this dialogue, is that, and introduce everybody here on the, in this round table or round couch with a square table.
Yeah.
But exactly that, what you said, Art, is that this is about bringing knowledge to individuals, bringing awareness to communities, whether you want to talk about polyneuropathy, or basically nerve degeneration or nerve breakdown, or you want to talk about that and just say, are your feet and toes tingling? Because there are multiple ways that we can define and take those words and make them something that everybody gets. Mm-hmm. And then we can create access to care and access to new technologies, make it understandable. So I'm not going to let you off the hook before we move to Scott, because we're just doing an introduction round, and then we are going to explain amyloidosis in a basic way. And then we're actually going to take it up to a higher level, and then we're going to bring it back down again, and we're going to talk about how it matters to everybody, because this is a conversation which is complex, because we're talking football brain.
Yes.
We're talking mommy brain. We're talking scientist brain. We're talking technology. We're talking cardiology, heart doctors. We're putting this all in together into a single conversation that makes it good for everybody.
Yeah.
And that is what wellness is, because it actually goes way beyond just even medicine. It goes way beyond wellness therapy. It's about community. Yeah. And it's also about laughing. So back to that last question, the Super Bowl.
Is the Bills or the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Now I was going to say, Seattle used to be an AFC, ain't that right? They turncoat. Well, and then, New England and all we played against all the time. So I'm going to go with the AFC and all. But even though Seattle was, when I started off, Zorn and all them guys, we played against them guys back in the day and all, but I'm going to stick with the AFC.
So what's that, Seahawks?
No,
No, oh, Patriots.
I'm going for the Chiefs. I'm going to Disney.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Art. So our last lovely individual that's a part of this conversation, Scott.
So I'm Scott Bader. I'm the CEO of Pulse PEMF. Pulse PEMF is a company that makes a premier pulsed electromagnetic field technology. And what's interesting and why I think I'm so happy to be here is I represent a technology that is over 100 years old in its use. It was actually taught in medical schools years ago and used in hospitals in this country. And it has never gone away. If you look on the PubMed website for the NIH, you'll find thousands of studies that have been done about PEMF, but yet it's not in our lexicon. People are unfamiliar with it. So the opportunity to talk in a group like this about how something like PEMF can be a complement to a condition that affects people in such a profound way is a great opportunity for us to bring a certain amount of education to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm excited about in doing and sharing a little bit more about what PEMF is along the way.
Yeah.
And I'll just go right to the answer on.
I don't have a
So
problem.
I'm a patriot.
All right.
I'm coming out on this.
This is almost like we sat people perfectly. 4-3, we win. I covered a lot of ground on these introductions, and I think that this is just the beginning of the dialogue. So I'm really, really happy to have each of you here because, some of you that I've spent a little bit more time with, you're my friends now. And I think that if I haven't spent enough time with you yet, you are going to be my friends, which is what makes this even more fun. And I'm just going to connect with my people that are running the slides for the live stream. I'm just going to have the Wellness Institute up here right now, which is do what is optimal. Brandon, can you give me a nod that we're good? And then for all of you watching the live stream, if you're going to hear it just this once, my code for switching the slide, of course, is touching my glasses, just reconnecting with my team. But the backbone of this, that's kind of where I come from as the Wellness Institute. We believe in doing what is optimal, which is a part of the story we've already told. I'll roll through this quickly. But the Wellness Institute's role is to bring clarity, integrity, and humanity to people's walk for health. What we really want to do is work with groups that have intention. And that intention may be Still for Life with Art and Liz that are looking at how do we contact communities and educate and create access. We're a nonprofit as well, so the money that we raise is about bringing access and education and also gathering together technologies with integrity, right? All of you that are here with us on this couch have technologies that I've talked to you about them. We know that your mission is a good mission. And we also know that your technologies are grounded in evidence. And we want to work with technologies that are intentional and help with that fragmented wellness map, that landscape, make it easier to navigate. On the next slide, where we have why we're doing this. As I've said, we're engaging communities. They're lacking access to these life-changing technologies and wellness resources. And if we look at, who we've been working with, athletes, right? Athletes that are already using some of these newer therapies and technologies, they guide us to which tools are actually working. That is part of our intention to then build on that. It's first access, but then we can, work with founders of new technologies. And those new technologies, those new or old technologies that have been around for a while but haven't been integrated, we're working on further data, further validation, further bringing those to the forefront. And then as we look at this, some of the first people that we support beyond the athletes that we work with are the first responders, are the veterans, are people that are in communities that are not being served today. We want to create that access. And so if we kind of, think about this in a very artistic way, because I'm a bit of my AI writes poetry to me. When I first interact, it was just so bizarre, but I'm actually saving it because I'm touched by it. So we are building a bridge is sort of the illustration that we're using here. And you guys can't see the slides, but they're on our split screen for our viewers. But we're building a bridge, and I'm going to just read this slide because I think it says it well. We're building a bridge between science and real world wellness. It's a bridge between innovation and responsibility. And it's a bridge between emerging technologies and the people who need them most. That is what I think we're all here for. And I'm so pleased that we have a shared mission. If we look at this orange slide here, which none of us can see, but our streamers can, we are here for HATTR, amyloidosis, which is a hereditary version or variant. In particular, your variant is the V122I.
I didn't claim.
That's true. Cheating. We got your but, on the slide, for people here, it says catching HTTR amyloidosis is early saving life. That's one of our key messages. Our other key message here is that wellness therapies support livable lives, right? Mm-hmm. And so my job, if I move to this little slide that has origami on it, and for those over here there, you can't quite see it, but maybe I'll just kind of move this so everybody can have a little bit of fun with us here. I'm cheating. I'm looking at a laptop down here.
No.
But if you look at these two images on the slide here, we've got like Yoda origami on the left, which is pretty darn good Yoda, if you ask me. But we also have that white piece of paper there, which is also Yoda origami. But it's kind of like origami success versus origami fail. And I bring this up because if we're talking about amyloidosis and what it is to people that aren't necessarily scientists, we have proteins, and amyloidosis is pretty much that proteins fold up like origami and they make a Yoda. But sometimes they don't fold so well. And if they don't fold properly, the shape's not right. And if the shape's not right, or if it is unfolded and then not folded back up together the same way, it doesn't have the same function. It doesn't have the same action in the body. So an unstable protein misfolding is kind of at the core of what happens in the body and amyloidosis. And if we kind of move on to the next slide, what we're looking at is another way to talk about that is a key. So I used to do proteomics back in the day. Here in the Bay Area, everything's full circle. With a company named Deplara, they did proteins on the applied biosystem science and side, and Celera was the genomics side. And when we talked about proteins in the body, we talked about them like a key, and if they're bent or, slightly miscut, they don't fit in the lock properly. They don't actually turn the lock, and so they don't perform their function. And if I kind of move to the next slide, this is where we get very techy, but TTR and Dr. Alexander, I'm going to let you say this. Transthyretin. This is like going to all different cultures, and it's like, where's the emphasis on the word transthyretin? So transthyretin, and this is where, let's dialogue here, Dr. Alexander. Ultimately, what we're seeing here on this slide is we've got transthyretin, and it's got 4 exact units that are exactly the same. But in genetics, in the HATTR, which is the hereditary ATTR, that 4-part protein destabilizes and it starts to break down. And when it breaks down, on the slide, you can see it's a tetramer because it's got 4 parts. And then it breaks down from 4 parts to just 2 parts, and that's a dimer. And then those two parts break down into just one part, a monomer. Mono is one. And so then that monomer, it kind of continues to break down and it loses its shape. And when it loses its shape, it kind of goes, I got to get back to looking like a Yoda. And it tries to refold, but it looks like bad Yoda. And then it starts clumping together. And when it clumps together, it ultimately aggregates, which is clumping. And then that clumping ends up forming what we call a fibril. And fibril are maybe these longer pieces that we see, which are those long blue lines on our slide, but they are very sticky and they like to stick to different tissues. And the different tissues that they stick to are our heart, our liver, our kidneys, all sorts of things. So I'm going to pause for a second. Dr. Alexander, should I do a reasonably good job of explaining what happens with TTR and proteins and breaking down in this fold?
You said the transthyretin protein is what we call a tetramer, so 4 pieces of protein that are stuck together. It's mostly produced by the liver, and so it circulates throughout the body. And normally what it does is it helps to transport vitamin A and thyroid hormone throughout the body. So it's kind of like a carrier, like an Uber driver that's kind of taking things to where it needs to be, nutrients to where they need to be. And, the big kind of initial step in this disease is when those tetramers break apart, like you said, into the monomers. Why they break apart, there's a number of reasons that we understand and reasons that we don't understand as well. We know that people that have the hereditary form of this, that one of those building blocks in that protein, amino acid, is just slightly different. And so that Yoda analogy, just one of those creases is bent in a little bit different way. And that's enough to, in some cases, make that protein more unstable and more likely to form amyloid. We know that there's also other factors probably related to age, related to gender or sex, and then probably environmental things that also promote those tetramers to break apart. And so there's a lot more research that needs to be done to understand those key pieces, because I would say that the mutation does increase the risk of developing amyloid, but there's lots of other things that usually contribute as well. Mm-hmm. And so, our group and others are doing a lot of research to try to understand that. Mm-hmm. And so, once they do break apart, then they start to clump together and form these amyloid fibrils that can deposit in different places in the body. And because it's in the bloodstream, there's a potential that it can go to more than one place. That's also something else we don't have a great understanding of, why sometimes the proteins go to the heart, sometimes they go to the nerves, sometimes they go to tendons and ligaments, or all the above. Mm-hmm. Everyone's a little bit different. And so kind of what drives that, we still need to do a lot of work. And in terms of how long it takes for this process, this is a very gradual process. We're talking months to years rather than minutes or weeks or days. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about the potential for diagnosing this and treating this, if because it's slowly developing, if we are actively looking for this and detect it with a lot of the tests that we can talk about later, we can catch this at a point where there hasn't been a lot of damage to the heart, and we can really improve patients' lives and outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I appreciate that. And I think something that you said that is really important to think about. And I'm just going to move to the next slide with all of the different body organs and tissues that are affected by the different proteins and the way that they are creating these different amyloids. It's my understanding that all of the different ways that the protein may break apart, how it cleaves, if it cleaves at what we call a C terminal, which is like an N terminal on a peptide, or the different places it cuts, are what then open up the different parts of the protein that cause it to maybe, like that lock and key analogy, bind to portions of the tissue. And that's why it's actually potentially binding to different tissues in the body. Is that a reasonable thought?
Yeah. I mean, I think we don't have the exact kind of mechanisms for why it goes to different places, but I think that how the proteins are cut is probably part of, how they end up going to certain places in the body.
Yeah. And I appreciate the other thing that you suggested, which this slide that we're looking at right now has, kind of the key places, the key heart, kidneys, liver, nerves. Those are kind of the key tissues that we see affected. But you did say something that was really, really important, which is catching this early. So, Brandon, I was going to show the slide that has the fact that there are about, I guess, 120 different genetic variants. Is that correct? And that kind of is what's cutting the different proteins in different places and then creating these different shapes is what I understood. But the key symptoms that we have up here, and I'm connecting this to that this is actually difficult to figure out if somebody has amyloidosis, because just reading off this slide here, key symptoms to watch for are fatigue. So you're tired. I can be tired any day for any reason. And I'm going to back it out because Art, I can read this off, but Art and Liz, you guys have lived this. And our viewers are looking at this list of symptoms, but what were your symptoms? And you talked about it at the beginning of the conversation. But Liz, we haven't heard from you, so I'm going to go to you first. What did you see? As Liz, what we're doing here is we've got two really important people in the room. Liz is our caregiver. She lives with Art. She lived with him for 42 years, apparently. Apparently. That in itself is Art, I think, Okay. And so you're a caregiver. Art is our patient advocate.
Remember,
Liz, I want to hear your voice. Liz, as symptoms go, what were you seeing? And I know you told me some stuff earlier about the stories behind what was being said with the doctors. I mean, you guys can decide what you want to talk about then. But I'm just opening that up.
Well, you have to remember that until 2023, all the symptoms that he had are so common. I watched him walk around in pain. I watched him roll around in bed because he can't sleep. His joints, this hurts, that hurts. But I was the same way he is. We just likened it. He played football all these years. We're getting older. You're going to have aches and pains. And I didn't think anything of it until he started having heart problems. And Art's one of these guys, I hate to squeal on you, but he's 70 years old. He's always taken care of his health, always, since I've met him. And so he's done all the right things, right, to maintain your heart. And then all of a sudden you find out you have heart issues. Now what? What else can you do? Then when you find out it's genetic, it was kind of, you say caregiver, I say more of a supporter. And the reason is because I'm not taking care of him, right? Maybe someday I might. But you're really there to comedy show. Yeah. But you're really there to be a support.
Yeah.
Right. And to advocate for him because as he doesn't speak for himself because he's got this, I don't know, it's a guy thing, I think. Little I'm not going to say machoism. That's not it. It's just like they don't talk about their health or they hold it in. Or, I mean, he could be in chronic pain, never say anything to me, but I know because I'm around him all the time. So are you okay? And stuff. And we would go, and he tells a story a little different with Dr. Ferdinand, which is true. Dr. Ferdinand is the one who suggested the genetic test when we went back home. But we were sitting in his office. This is the second time we've been there. So we were there in 2018 and then back in 2023. And he did say, Art, tell me a little bit about your family history. Do you have any heart issues in the family? He said, no. And I looked at him, I said, your brother had a heart transplant so many years ago. And I was like, oh, now keep telling me. Yeah, I'm squealing because I hear the story and I'm just,
yeah, he has a heart now.
as they would say, those stinking concussions.
Yeah. And that's kind of where my support comes in.
Yeah.
Right, to be there to support his health. He would do the same for me. Well, maybe not.
Back then, even when I knew I had heart problems, back then they said, don't go in the sauna if you have heart issues.
Right.
But I was doing it anyhow.
It's non-compliant.
But I'm saying the thing is, and that's where it works out nice and all now. Dr. Alexander, doctors, I respect them all back in the day. But I just in the back of your mind, these guys are, there's something under the table, so to speak. In the pharmaceutical companies, I knew they was out. The healthcare system. So, what I found out now, and it works out real nice. You got to have trust and, Basically,
Yes.
you're part of a team now when you have a situation like that. And then the thing is, I rely on the medication now because it's there for a reason.
A lot of these things are what we would say are not specific, meaning they could be related to a lot of other conditions,
Yeah.
oftentimes more common conditions. And everyone is a little bit different in terms of what the symptoms might be. It might be orthopedic things. It might be heart-related things like shortness of breath and leg swelling. Hereditary patients might have gastrointestinal symptoms, so upset stomach, diarrhea, constipation, very common just in the general population. And one of the things that means is that a lot of times people see different doctors, different specialists who have different knowledge bases for amyloidosis, and they're only seeing one piece. It's kind of blind man the elephant. You're only seeing one part of the puzzle. So it really takes someone to step back and kind of look at things holistically. So I think that's one challenge from the healthcare side. On average, people see about half a dozen doctors before they're diagnosed with this. And I think really highlights the fact that that's one of the challenges. There's not one particular sign or symptom. So hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that later too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you kind of made me just think a little bit out of the box for a second. I hate that word actually, but you just made me think about something, which is, in our hospital settings, in our healthcare settings, we're very resource deprived right now. There's a lot of, it's difficult, right? People may present with symptoms, like you said, that could be related to a multitude of disease states or a multitude of issues that aren't necessarily amyloidosis. And when I think about the integration then of wellness institutes, wellness clinics, people that are working with other individuals that maybe hear other parts of the story and can be aware, that knowledge can be shared. Or maybe they might even be able to, the quality of wellness that we're talking about at the Wellness Institute is we're looking to elevate knowledge. Ken, we haven't heard a whole lot from you yet. One of the things thinking about HATTR and amyloidosis and the 120 different genetic variants that are out there. And then I think that this particular version affects 1 in 25 African Americans are carriers of this particular variant. You're an epidemiologist. That's your background. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think it's a really important piece, because epidemiologists are medical detectives. So we don't see individual patients, but we gather the data and say who, what, when, and why. Who's getting it? Why are they getting it? Where do they reside? All of those things. And once you start diving deep enough and separating the groups, you can see, okay, it's more prevalent in African Americans versus others. But even when you get to that point, I tell people something that Art brought up. If a community already has issues with healthcare, they're not going to be so open to hearing about a problem. That's one. Now, what I have been thinking about initially, why one way, and we haven't talked about it yet, there are tons of college students, medical students, always need, and then clinics. So one of my students just graduated from University of Pennsylvania, and for 4 years, she worked with a clinic that communities and do testing. Why not have this be one of the add-ons for the testing? Because they're already there. They already know that. So it's not an isolated thing of, oh my God, I'm going to hear this horrible outcome.
Right.
What do I do with this information?
Mm-hmm.
But you're being tested for maybe sickle cell anemia, whatever else. And so then there's somebody there who will do the follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a great opportunity to identify a number of diseases, especially in the African American community, that you can tap into and then have follow-up and have a greater number of ways of reaching out to So that's one of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is people often are leery of medications too. How do I know this is really going to work if there is a medication? Don't forget, this is Black History Month. And when you talk to people about health, they know that there have been times where there have been misuse in the African American community with healthcare. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the Tuskegee, event that happened. And so there are people getting around that too to say, when you say optimal wellness, even moving the needle a little bit is a major thing for people, whether it's changing your diet. If you do all, hearing that Art has been, his nutrition probably helped him a lot because he was aware that he needed, people who think, well, I can drink soda, and I can eat anything I want, or what my community normally serves. But if it's not necessarily good for you, you may not totally get rid of it, but modify it to say, maybe you need to make sure you have a salad and all these other nutritious foods and see how your body responds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities, not only for this disease, but to how we rethink, how do we reach people?
Mm-hmm.
When I start explaining things like that, the outcome may be different when you buy something. And so your expectation a little different.
Agreed. And that goes with the whole, intention, right? We're looking to ensure that the groups that we're working with, not only are we having an intention and a mission for, as you said, educating, creating trust, creating access, but then the resources there, because if we're all working together, team, and we know that Art has been utilizing various tools beyond nutrition and athletics, and exercise, and good family, and people that you're surrounding yourself with, which is a harmonious community, and a great doctor who can figure out this is actually your problem. Then the other parts as well, like it's not just a red light therapy. This is a red light therapy that has been utilized by individuals that have similar issues, and it changed their outcome.
Correct.
It made a difference. It impacted their care. And so it's not just, oh yeah, sure, this is the next big thing.
Right.
This is knowledge that we're sharing with you because we care about your journey and your health and you actually living a good life.
To add one more thing to that. So these smaller clinical trials that we would like to do become even more important. Because everyone thinks you need these huge trials, but whether it's shipwave, whether it's pulse, you want to be able to say, here's a group, even if it's a small group, does this have an impact for lupus? Does it have an impact for a certain disease? Looking at the age, these small studies can really open the door, and to compare them to the big study. What can we identify to even say, we're not necessarily saying we're helping everyone. It may not, but if we can identify one group with certain symptoms or certain outcomes, that's huge.
Absolutely.
And, so we're looking to raise the money so that when we meet and we decide, we are developing now a hierarchy of what are the diseases that we want to look at? Who are we going to partner with in the community? Whether it's the Heart Association or lupus or whatever. How do we recruit the right, people to enroll and really track them to see what the outcome is? And I don't see enough of those small ones that are used to build bigger ones. So my last point with this is when I am asking a research paper, like let's research everyone who's using website or any of these technologies. We can't even compare them because they're not using the same thing. So even someone who's going to tease that out is important to say, can we have multiple studies to look at that to say, I did a whole research on pro athletes with and looking at what they're doing, and it's all over the place. So there's some positive evidence in terms of what technologies you can use. But so my role, I would like to be able to say a year from now when we're back here, here are the results of what we found within a certain group. Here are the technologies. Post is amazing in terms of helping people with these symptoms, another group with another set of symptoms, or again, as someone said, maybe it's not uniform. Could be that they need 2 or 3 different things for certain people, and somebody else, it's
Personalized care.
personalized care.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're there yet as a scientific community, because I think people are still looking for the one pill sometimes, or the one solution. And when we finally can start teasing some of that out, I think we're going to see some amazing results.
I agree. And so I'm going to I absolutely, and I'm going to piggyback on that and use that as a springboard, because you're talking about outcomes, right? And our goal is to create this opportunity for understanding what's personalized, right? But also we know that a single pill, it's not necessarily it's not targeting the root cause, the source of the issue. I think that we're in a place where we're seeing that people aren't necessarily getting better, and we're kind of looking at that and realizing that we need to approach care in a different way, and that's really a big part of the topic here. And I'd like to. There's a lot of topics I'd like us to come back to. But I would like to take this as a stepping off point to talk a little bit more about the adjunct technologies, the adjunct, wellness therapies that are available as well, because, we know that amyloidosis, which is the topic that we're discussing, it's the breakdown of a tetramer protein, misfolding, then becoming stuck in the tissues. And then basically it's not reversible. And Brandon, I'm just going to have you go to the orange slide. This living with ATTR amyloidosis, because reality is once you have ATTR, and if it's not diagnosed early enough, then those amyloid fibrils, they attach to the tissues, and they can't be removed necessarily that simply. So now you need to live with the symptoms we've been talking about. And actually, I'm going to have our 2 individuals that are having those adjunct tools speak next. And I'm going to have you speak first, Scott, representing Pulse, and just give us, some of your thoughts around how you can support symptoms,
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say, just hearing the conversation, you said out of the box, you don't like that. I call it curiosity. That's one of the things that I'm so enthusiastically hearing. I think 20 years ago, the idea of something that might be considered wellness or adjunct wasn't really all that welcomed in the conversation. And we're seeing more and more of these things coming together in a way where people can get the benefits. Energy is something that our bodies need. So all the treatments and the things that we do, our bodies need to be a fundamental part of healing ourselves, no matter what other things that we do. So some of these other therapies, some of these other technologies are very beneficial in doing that. They provide some of the benefits around pain relief. So PEMF is generally known to people because they're looking for a solution, and pain relief is one of those things. It's been proven through studies to also reduce inflammation, which is another thing that our bodies really struggle with. So if our bodies are focused on addressing one problem, doesn't have the energy to focus on some other things that we need it to. PEMF also will increase circulation of both blood and lymphatic fluid, those things that bring oxygen to the cells. So what PEMF does, which is really, special, is it does it at a cellular level. All healing ultimately has to be done at a cellular level. It's the damaged cells that we have to address. And those cells need energy. Generally it's ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that is the battery power, because every cell in our body is like a factory, and that factory has a function. Without power, that factory does not do its function. So
I was going to say, I know we're not in church and all. No. Honestly, and Liz will tell you, PMF, how often I do that?
Daily.
When?
Every morning.
Every morning for at least, I do it for about an hour every day.
Every joint.
I get up in the morning. That's the first thing I do and all.
Yeah.
And it does relieve. And that's what I'm saying, just compliment. And we was talking about medication and all too. There's one thing, and I try, Liz will tell you, I try to biohack my own self, as far as
sometimes it backfires.
Yeah, it did backfire, and we're talking about, and we're not talking about therapy for my amyloidosis, but I got AFib. So there's, I had to go through the cardioversion, ablation.
Nothing was working to keep it out of.
And so, there's something I got to take to keep my heart in rhythm. And so I call myself, first you take it twice a day. What I did was, just start off. Then I'm going to just use half, And then did it happen then that I started having problems?
No.
And then I call myself, I'm going to take myself to the next level. It's just unintentionally, I was coming out of California. It's just so happened I forgot to bring the pills with me.
Well, he didn't tell me anything about that. And I had gotten him an Apple Watch before, because you're going to be out for a while, just kind of, whatever. And his heart was in rhythm because you were on the medication. And he calls me and he says, "Oh, this stupid Apple Watch you gave me, telling me my heart's back in AFib."
Oh,
right. And I was just like, I'm on the portal. Butterberry. He forgot. I did squeal on you. I didn't tell him you actually forgot.
So I'm just saying, the
he did it.
Is,
and it went out of it.
We're talking right here. Right, there's things that complement that. I know I got to take the medication now. So I take it religiously unless it from me. So I'm going to go on the next day. I do it religiously. Liz will tell you too. I'm in sauna every day and I get my best. But I work out in the sauna too. I use plans.
I would say, which is as a supporter, is one of the times that I noticed that you were probably not taking your medication, because he would work out in the sauna and then he'd come and sit on the couch, he was exhausted. And it's like, what are you doing? I said, I really think you're overdoing it. Like you're doing damage. No, I know what I'm doing. Whatever. Yeah. Oh, it's my body. I know me. Yeah. And then to find out, no, you really are overdoing it. You're not on your meds. You're pushing yourself way too much. You need to get back and check. And that's, and that's where the wives save lives kind of thing comes in. You call me a squealer, but when you love someone, you'll squeal.
So sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one of our other adjunct tools that support individuals, and I think this is a really interesting. ShiftWave is really intriguing, and I think it has a completely different way of supporting an individual. So I'd like to hand this off to Dr. Noor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just loving the conversation. And one thing I'm really taking away is it's an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. It's an ecosystem of perspectives. It's an ecosystem of expertise. It's an ecosystem of technology to support. And so I'll maybe go to my first slide.
Yeah, Brandon, you have, yep, we're good.
So I'll just very briefly why we're here at Super Bowl with ShiftWave is we're actually official partners with the NFL. And we actually selected going into sports and specifically the NFL for a reason. is that there are some really hard problems there. And we wanted to be able to help solve those problems. And in the process, show what our technology can do. Mm-hmm. And I often think of it as also like, I bring up this thought exercise. Just imagine you're like a mom with a teenager, and a couple years from now, you go to your teenager and be like, we know you've had some attention problems in school, so we bought you this $10,000 mental health device, and you're mandated to use it for 30 minutes a day. Let's see how that goes over with your teenager. Now let's paint another picture. A teenager's favorite quarterback uses a device that helps them with their mental performance, and they see that and they learn that this is what makes them an elite athlete. Well, now that teenager is going to say, oh, I want that. They're going to be coming to you to get that. And so we saw a huge opportunity here through the professional athletes of, oh, let's change the narrative from mental health problem to a mental performance opportunity. And let's work in that area. And actually, I have to say, coming into and working with the NFLPA, didn't expect this, but we very kind of quickly found this retired player community. These guys you're great. They're so great. You're just like these gentle giants that put their lives on the line, literally. And there's also a lot of opportunities there to help them. And it's just such a great community, and it's 28,000. So it's a large group out there. And just through this work, it's been such an honor to get to meet him in art. I'm 70 years old.
I know. What?
I was with him yesterday at the party. So that's why we're here. And one thing with ShiftWave is it's a general wellness device, which means we can just get it out there. And it's very important. As a company, we want to help people. We want to be a part of supporting this ecosystem. And as a general wellness device, as long as we don't make claims, we can go out there, we can just start helping people. So we're very clear, this is not a medical device. We're not diagnosing, preventing, or treating any disease or disorder. But I will say nothing on how we could help amyloidosis. But as a general wellness device, we are a foundational wellness. And so the way we look at it is get the foundation solid. And if you're doing that, it's going to help everything. Right? So if you can help with sleep, you can help with regulation. Right? You can help people with their pain, as we both do, which is very important for people. And if you can just help them recover from the daily stress of life, now you're giving them a tool. And by the way, let's make it really accessible, enjoyable. So I'll put up the picture of what actually ShiftWave is, just so people can have a view of it. So it's a chair that has built into it different vibrations through your body. So these pressure waves that travel all the way through. And then we synchronize with a system that's guiding you in breath work as well. This is another very powerful. So we're taking away the visual stimulus. So we're just chronically over visually stimulated. So removing that, and then you're in this beautifully reclined position. So all of this is now it's this multimodal approach to synchronizing and driving your nervous system into a very highly regulated state. And we just saw these really amazing results. And so now this is something we can take this to other police stations, fire departments, and say, hey, this is what we're seeing here. Maybe you should consider this as a tool that you bring into your ecosystem.
That's great. That's great.
And I had a chance to speak with one of the firefighters at the Steinberg event yesterday, and he said it changed his life. It was associated with the NeuroCatch Award, but he just couldn't speak more highly about it, and just some of the things that he's seen as a first responder and the amount of stress that can create, that's sympathetic, right? And in speaking about that whole elevated sympathetic, the parasympathetic is not bringing that fight or flight back down to a balanced state, and how that affects,
Yeah.
firefighters like Sean.
I mean, the stories I hear, I can't really, we try to keep it very modest on our part, but the stories I hear is when you really need it to be able to come back into regulation is absolutely game changing for firefighters. We have over 40 systems in Ukraine. I've been over to Ukraine 4 times since the full scale invasion. And if you can insert at those moments of really high stress and trauma, And if you can downregulate the system right there and then, it really can change the course of someone's life substantially.
100%.
Urgent
facilities. The doctors and the nurses are under so much stress.
Yep.
Just repeating, what was said by we have an audience here actually. And one of our audience members was just saying, the first responders in the emergency rooms and the amount of stress and duress there would be great, and an ER setting as well. Yeah,
and stress. If stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex, it diminishes your capabilities. Studies have shown that it's the equivalent of being legally drunk. So when you're in a high stress situation, be able to bring people back so they're more regulated.
Yeah.
Now they're thinking clearly. They're making good decisions again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
And some of the beautiful things have come out. We have a little case study here with Otis Grigsby, but he got it. You can see on the slide. It really helped us manage his anxiety, and you saw his sleep scores go up. And he just said it was a game changer. But also the part I really loved is that it also really helped his wife. Yeah. And it really helped his kids. And when we talk about the ecosystem, and I made a little slide here too, but even if there's someone struggling, it's a whole system around of caregivers, or just people supporting. And one thing we've seen time and time again is people get a shift wave for someone that really a tough situation, but then the reports come back that everyone around them is just like, I needed that so much. And it's a strange phenomenon with caregivers or supporters is that caregivers are a one-way street. I'm a caregiver. That's my job. That's what I'm doing. And stop caring for yourself or expecting help from others. It's very important, I think, to keep this in mind and be able to take care of what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can get that one way. You can take. As a caregiver, big time.
And just kind of piggybacking on the whole concept of the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic and what's happening. Ultimately, when we look at the brain being in a hyperexcited state or an anxiety state, there's information that shows that there's a descending pathway that comes from the brain, and the amygdala kind of being the center of that, where the affective state or emotions, controlling the stress, and then that descending pathway then is what's regulating everything downstream from that, the peripheral, the physiology, the different organs and systems that we just. Ultimately, if this is hyperexcited, we're creating, like you said, we're not sleeping properly, we're dysregulated, and all of those are basically poison to the system. And I think, it's a hard thing to grasp. At the core of it, being balanced, not being regulated, is, like you said, it's the ability to then give the system its support so that it can function as it should.
And one thing that we've really found that is where we can be really helpful is simultaneously addressing both kind of the physical body and the mental state.
What do you think, Dr. Alexander, about looking at autonomic regulation? Have you curious? Like that's something where it's a little bit like not what you see in the typical healthcare setting. But where are you at with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I guess I'd have a medical and a little less medical answer to that. So I think with this disease in particular, one of the manifestations is neuropathy. And so when we think about neuropathy, there's different types. There's, symptoms related to how you sense things. There's symptoms related to what we call motor neuropathy, so movement and weakness. And then the third bucket is the autonomic nervous system, which can be affected by oftentimes being particular standing up, so what we call orthostatic hypotension. So when the blood pressure isn't appropriately increasing, and so you can have blood flow that doesn't go up to the brain when you stand up. It can affect your digestive system, because the autonomic nerves are important for how food moves throughout, right? So we know that there is a direct link between amyloidosis and causing these neuropathy symptoms. And so I think that's kind of what I'd say medically. But I think it would come back to this theme of we have effective therapies that can slow down this disease and work very well when it's they're started early. But I think it's also important to think about things that can complement and manage symptoms in parallel with that. There's a New York Times article about ATTR amyloidosis a few months ago. And one of the things they really highlighted was that this condition is quickly becoming something that you don't die from, but that you live with. So meaning that with these advances we've had medically, people are living longer, which is great. It also means you're living longer with these potential manifestations and symptoms of the amyloidosis. Mm-hmm. So thinking about all the things that can complement and treat those symptoms, I'm all for exploring those things and doing the studies, which don't always have to be, international randomized controlled trials. There can be complementary things. And so I would say that understanding how you can help with these autonomic symptoms is something that we need more.
And you said something else that was interesting too, that kind of made me think about the whole longevity thing. In other words, people are living longer, but we really want to live long if we're not having a good time. So my personal thing, but I've also, I spoke at a longevity conference in Dublin, a couple of summers ago, and that was really a very core point around the definition of longevity. It's not about living longer; it's about living better in the length of life that you are going to extend. I think that it's also, I've had to ask the other day, what do you mean about this? And I was like, well, probably you think. I think that us as a group of individuals are here representing a different type of wellness way. It is the type that wants to improve life, individualize care, create access and education, and have a mission. It's not making sure that my face doesn't have wrinkles. I'm good with looking decent when I'm 120. I'm down for that too. But I think more importantly that our focus is on actually supporting a well-lived life.
You have to say, at Stills for Life commercial. Our goal is to extend your shelf life, your quality of life. We always say extend, because I heard it from this older lady that lived and, visiting her and her husband and all. And she was telling me, I said, how you doing? She said, well, I'm trying to extend my shelf life, which made a lot of sense and all. Because you go to the store, you got a shelf life on there. If you can get an extension on, you get more. And that just made a lot of sense to me. But like you said, if you're just taking medication, it's just extending your life. I'm just thinking, boy.
That's the point.
Yeah.
I think that's one. The whole world is shifting right now, right? And the healthcare system's burdened. It's just, there's a lot there for them. So they could use support.
Yes.
Wellness is really the upstream side of that. But then you have this whole explosion of data. Free wearables on right now. Okay? And people are tracking bleeds. Everyone can get their blood work. I have a subscription to get blood work, and there's an app where I can look at it. It's just the amount of information. Your shelf life. You didn't know what your shelf life was before. Mm-hmm. I know my vascular ages. I know my chronological ages. Didn't know that 3 years ago. So that's just changing so fast. I love your shelf life. You can start to see what your shelf life is and be like, ooh, can I put that in the freezer?
I'm getting a little stale.
That's where the football, I tell, Liz and my kids the same thing. It's like playing a game. To me, the first quarter is 20 years old, 21, 40, let's say. You don't get a halftime. So 41, 60, I tell over.
Heck yeah. And then I want to win.
Yeah.
Go see
Oh,
us.
That's a different game. I always tell people, like we talk about the Super Bowl, biggest game in the world, so to speak. But I always say, even talking with kids, you always ask, what is the biggest sport or the biggest game? We'll say Super Bowl, World Series, whatever, baseball. And I always say, the biggest games out there is called life. I mean, and you got to play that game right. And in that game, you're going to have injuries and all this, how you respond and all. And if you got a good crew of teammates and all, and, it can take you to the next level, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can only imagine the technologies that are going to come after all of this too. It's what we're seeing now is one small sliver. Imagine, as he was saying, how much data is he collecting now? Can you imagine anything else?
But but technology, man, that's cortisol. Because you got your watch, you got your, or the funny thing about that, I do the same thing. I look at my Apple, then you look at your Whoop, and then some other things, your bed, you forgot, and they all off. So the thing is, it's almost like, which one can I trust? And then if anything, because you can get up, man, you think you had a good sleep, you look on it, 5 hours, man. No, I'm just saying, if you depend on, that's what's going on in the world, depending on technology.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong if they complement each other.
And that's where it's like lovely to be sitting with a quote unquote intervention. These are all diagnostics. Going into NFLPA and talking to players, this thing stresses me out.
Oh yeah.
I didn't get enough sleep. I can't get enough sleep. HRV's down. But then if you give them tools where now they can do something about it, now it takes away the stress of that and they can take an active role.
Sure. And we forget that we're creatures of habit. We compare everything to something else. So even with this, I hope that we walk away with expectations, because if it didn't feel good, they're not going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
If it did do it again, you've got more time.
Yeah.
And, the people that do the biohacking, they talk about a journey. They're trying to biohack, which means I'm trying to shorten getting healthier or getting that result that I'm looking for. But they recognize it's not one pill. Mm-hmm. It's really a lifestyle. And to the extent that people can recognize, I can do things that will help get me on that path, that will give me a better shelf life and a better quality of life. That's, I think, the important thing, that people know what to expect, because I do think so many people are still in this perspective that if someone gives me a pill or a shot, something will happen because someone told me that. If they feel it, then it matches. If it doesn't, then the trust breaks down. Mm-hmm. So there's so much information out there. If you Google something, and I've heard many doctors say Google is maybe their worst enemy, right? Because now you have people who believe that they're more educated because they've read something. And there are so many studies out there. So a group like this that can actually contrast things and look at evidence-based things that they should be looking at from trusted people who are looking at it for the holistic reasons really provides people with a pathway.
Yeah. I want to kind of flip this really quick, just kind of flip the scenario. You talk about the wearable technology and things like that. Well, the reality is it's great for those who have them, but there's so many people that wouldn't have access to them, right? And so it's kind of the same thing what we're talking about a little bit here, because there's so many people in so many communities that don't have access to good health care, that don't even have the knowledge and things like that. So just same kind of concept. So
I was thinking the exact same thing, Liz, because we create algorithms based upon data, and the data coming from wearables, and then the algorithms that we create for treatment are focused on a certain population of individuals, which is not democratizing care. It isn't doing it to the entire population?
Right.
And so that is a really critical question. And I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, wearables, and they're great. They give us information and they allow us to measure, is this making a difference? I'm working with, as you said, a pro athlete, because they're a voice, so that they help a kid when their parents show up with something and say, this is going to make your life better. They see that their favorite quarterback is using it and they want to utilize it. So, how do we take all of that and roll it into a bigger picture so we can utilize our platform, so that we can utilize the knowledge that we understand this works for X, Y, and Z? And then how do we take that and make sure that it's also creating that access so that we're also representing all walks of life? Because I'm right there with you, sister. Yeah.
But usually the secret with technology is once it's out there and it's proven, the prices come down.
Yeah.
So the ultimate, I'm not saying that it's true for everything, but, I know when I was working with, even when you look at all the studies from NASA, the technology that we use today originated from space studies and all of that.
And we have a question from our audience. And I'll read.
Nice wellness therapies have unintended consequences because they affect areas of the body, unlike medication for surgeries or procedures. They have this ability to lift the whole system of the body. And what's intriguing about both shift wave and pulse is that they experience these unintended consequences. Because you gut brain connection and the metabolic cascade just rushes out when you alter all those is powerful. Your time, some of the hormonal changes that we're actually dealing with. You're treating pain, but there's other things resulting from it. So
I just want to reiterate that into the mic, because it may not be heard by our audience. That consequences from these therapies, and I think that just reiterating and summarizing, taking data, taking information, doing studies that understand and try to document those unintended consequences, we may find out that we thought it did one thing, but oh wait, there were these other added benefits too. To your point, if we can provide enough access, if we can create enough information and data, and then maybe modulate that with some algorithm that is hopefully not skewed one way or the other, or misrepresenting a population or underrepresenting a population, then that can be paid forward into an improved quality of care that benefits a well person. I think I got a thumbs up from our audience member. Yes.
Well, and what's interesting about that, just as one example, there's a lot of reasons why people will use PEMF. Pain is one thing, a lot of professional athletes use it. It's in a lot of training facilities of NFL teams. But one of the things that we get when we survey people is that there's better, deeper sleep. And it's something that we know. It's something is one of those unintended consequences. And we all know our bodies heal while we sleep. So it is one of those very beneficial things. And, we're very fortunate to the question of access. Our systems are designed to be professional in a professional setting. We have thousands of professionals that use our system that people can get access to in any town almost in the country and pay much less than having to go out and buy a system. And with more systems, you'll see those prices become more competitive. So those things, I believe, to your point, will happen in a very beneficial way.
Yeah, we've even when we designed it, everything that we've built into ShiftWave, it's there for a purpose. And part of it was to just keep the price down. And our price point for some is high, but it could have been a $60,000 to $250,000 medical device, especially if we went and try to do FDA certification. Just now you're pushing up to $1 million. But we wanted to get it to people. And so we've kept it very streamlined in how it's the engineering, the design around it. Not anything superfluous to it or making it a luxury looking device at all. And we found that in that we can also get it out to different clinics and different locations where a lot of people have access to it. And the 40 plus systems in Ukraine delivering over 200,000 sessions a year now with those. And it's a machine that can just keep running and running. And so they use them really around the clock there. And it provides a lot of benefits. I think one of our big challenges is that, the stories I get are really profound. But we as a company can't share those because that would then go over the line of this being a general wellness or making claims to it. But we see it time and time again. And so our challenge is how do we navigate this where we're very conservative? We're also conservative in a very loud, like the wellness industry is the Wild West right now. And the things people are saying, I'm like, you can't say that. And we're trying to be on the very conservative side of it. And yet we're seeing these great things, and it's a frustrating space to be in some ways. And so learning how to navigate that, I think, and that's why we are doing the studies, but that takes time.
How do we brainstorm, right? Like what from, let's take it back to ATTR, right? Let's take it back to hereditary amyloidosis. And, what's our step one there? What's something that's a good first step that we can offer that makes a difference? And I'm just going to kind of put it out there. One of the things that we're teaming up for under Wellness for Life, which is the Wellness Plus Still for Life, is basically going out and conducting education, right? One of your main missions is that you want to be a voice to communities that's a truthful, trustworthy, and relationship building voice. Something that doesn't, just scare people off and they go, I don't want to get tested. I don't want to know. Like that's maybe step one.
He saw 2 or 3, maybe more cardiologists. Yeah, a lot. And it was never mentioned. It's like, take heart meds, do this, but nobody even said could be something different. So if his oldest brother, that's fine, he made the decision to have surgery. Been in a joint thing, primary physicians. Those are the ones who are on the front line. And if you can educate them about the disease, there's a karyotype, there's a wild type of stuff. So where they're familiar, when patients come to them, they're going to go, oh, it's maybe a genetic test or something like that. So that's really our mission. Into stuff.
But there is a
Data. All players and all too. And we had one doctor, from clinics and all, and the doctor. And we were sitting there, so we had somebody in the audience raise their hand. So the same thing, they asked him about genetic. And it's, like he's talking about words. When I say 2-syllable words and all, it's in the dirty matter, just making it plain and simple. And we said, well, nuclear testing, I know, especially where I'm from, nuclear, I think something great blow up. Tell me, That's the first. And those are things and that's the whole point. You know, Liz was talking about going into the community. It's a shame you guys say you got to go in this community. It should be universal. Law. We should be looking at. I mean, that's sorry. It's not like we're doing anything special. That's what we also be doing. We should be helping our neighbors, helping ourselves, helping our families along. But it was just now and I'm telling you, Dr. He knew where I was coming from, you know, because he told me, I might not even asked him was, you know, he told me, you know, you can go. Now I'm thinking back. He just said, it's just a simple genetic test. They just wiped the swab and he might have made that. Well, he was coming getting down my level. You know, I learned something today. You know, when you talk to kids, you gotta get on your knees and talk on the level. And that's where I think Dr. Fern, he got down on my level and said, it's just a simple cheek. I said, oh, okay, I'm all right. But if he had mentioned, said, nuclear test.
Bombs go off in your head.
Adios. Let me die.
Well, I mean, I think what I would say to kind of dovetail on all this is that completely agree that you need to get into those communities that are disadvantaged or have delays in diagnosis. You know, so we've done some studies years within kind of our standard amyloid center as well as national studies to look at patterns of detecting amyloidosis. And not surprisingly, but it's good to quantify it. We have excellent amyloidosis centers throughout the countries and major medical centers. In those areas, diagnose patients at a certain rate. But then once you start to get out away from it distance-wise, you know, 50, 100 miles, then the diagnosis plummets. And so we kind of have these deserts of amyloidosis detection. So that kind of identifies the problem. Those are the places to target. And I think bringing the resources that we have at these amyloid centers of excellence to those places and having folks like Liz and Art there. But then I think it's also important to partner with people in those local communities that know how the message is going to land and take it to the level of understand. And that also is going to be a key component of that trust is, you know, really identifying those community stakeholders who had that trust and had that understanding of what, you know, the needs and challenges are, and then bringing in that expertise externally for amyloidosis. I guess what I would say maybe is the word would be partnership. Yes. That's really important. But I think we have a good roadmap of what areas are highest risk for not doing a great job. Right. And those would be the first places, I think, in terms of where you'd have the biggest delta.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I'm glad you.
I know. Very agreeable.
So we have an initial plan of action, which is we make a map, right? We know where there are those deserts, and who are, and then each of those locations a champion. We have our people that have lived with it. Art and Liz have lived with it. They talk. They've lived the walk, and it's just a cheek swab.
Louis,
To start.
That's a start.
no, I was gonna say we already.
Yeah.
Doing some things and again, start in your backyard. And the thing is, we look at it too. It's just, we're not the only people out there and all too. It's almost like developing relationships in the different parts of it. So you don't have, I like to stay home with the family once in a while. I'm just saying the whole point is, I think there's a lot of folks out there, once they learn or if they have it, and we know folks, Johnny and Kwame, they're out there doing something. We found out, I was talking last year via, what we've been doing. Johnny had, he was working out great shape with Miss, Ole Miss and all too. He's a military, he was starting defense and all, had a heart attack or something happened. Like in August of last year, we find out that when he went, they found out he couldn't come out. I think he finally got a heart transplant. And they're out there.
That's just one story we know.
And that's what we're looking at. Find folks like that so we can team.
And I with them. do work with another guy who's he's a godsend for us because he is he knows the industry, he knows community leaders all over the country. So, and that you community leaders, right, with a physician, with you have to connect all the puzzle pieces to put together something that's effective. You want to get people effective, and I think that for us, that's going to keep navigate us through this. Where do we start? What do we do? Who do we go to? The whole thing. So I definitely want to give credit, to where credit is due for sure. You connected us with so
that's all we got all connected and know what it's all about.
Yeah.
I don't use that word networking, but more so forming a team and also, becoming part of a team.
With the same I mean, everyone here, I think it's the same end goal, right?
It's not the TR. And we look at it, the reason why I look at it as an opportunity, just as they say, I 4-letter word, I hope I don't get in trouble. But I got the crap,
So you can talk.
So I can talk about my crap because I got it.
Yeah.
And it makes it come as a third person. So when you talk about people, father passed away from pancreatic cancer.
No, prostate. Yeah. The P word.
I'm prostate. No, but the thing is, we look at this. There's other things too, heart disease and all too within the community. Was talking about a lot of genetics, cholesterol. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's where we form this relationship where we just that a platform, then talk about other things that affect our family.
Absolutely. And amyloidosis, which is interesting, right? So we didn't talk about this as much, but ATTR, which is particularly more focused on like cardio symptoms, amyloid fibrils are connected with dementia. They're connected with eyesight changes. They're connected with, liver, kidney. Those are kind of more the ATTR. But also, I mean, this is a bit more far-reaching because it's a protein misfolding. And so I think the really interesting part is, we've talked about education and kind of activation almost. But the next component then is access, right? And I think that's part of the Wellness Institute's mission, which is we're a nonprofit, right? Our goal is to gain access to these adjunct therapies because it's like a member brought up and we all kind of gave the head nod to, there are consequences that we didn't necessarily think would come out of the use of some of these adjunct therapies. Or the combination, or the more individualized combinatorial or multimodal care, if we're going to go into the terms that we're used to saying in the healthcare world. And, that is where, so education, activation, and then access, and that access teamed with our mission, which is also to create small studies that allow for evidence. Then kind of creates this ecosystem that brings us to the point where now these tools become more widespread, more well-known, more utilized. It becomes almost like a snowball going downhill. It gains speed, it gets bigger, and the individuals that are going to get run over by it or improved, get the benefits, are just massive. It's a snowball effect, right? That's what they call that, I think. But it's not one-sided. Like the people that are gathered here today are the core team, because we can't just educate and activate. We need to create access. We need to create data. And then we need to use our individual platforms and our individual, abilities to make that go out and create good. And so any of you that are listening, you can donate. And that is, I think, I'm not the person that asked, but I remember, I'm the person that works behind the scene with sales. And, I remember sitting in a meeting and they had sales guys raise their hands. How many of you asked for an upgrade for your room at the hotel? And like everybody raised their hand. And I thought, wow, I didn't. And what I realized after that moment was, oh, it doesn't ask, and so there is an ask here because, and we also ask you to participate because just because we're a community here, we have to extend that community and more people need to be involved to make this a worldwide change, right? We don't want to treat sick people. We want to be happy and live good lives.
I was going to say, too, we're talking about communities and all. A lot of times when you talk about going to communities, a lot of those community leaders and those in the community think how much it's going to cost us. And I always want to bring the point across, too, that we come in the community and all, it doesn't cost the community nothing at all. It's just objective. And sometimes people, and I can speak for myself personally, you're paranoid. Oh, I got this. Oh, we're going to come in and do this for you. And where I came from, man, there's something under the table they're doing. You know what I mean? It's almost like we're going to come in and help you. No, you ain't going to do nothing for free. But I can guarantee you what we're doing is, this is what we're supposed to do and all, too. So we come in, so it's not like you go in there, oh, it's going to cost you this, it's going to cost you that. Yeah, it costs money. We don't put the pressure, anything like that. Go sponsors, and that's our job, community, as far as coming in there and enhancing not only, the health, but the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
People think, and I know ain't nothing, if somebody come to, back in the day, we got something for you free.
Ain't no such
That's a
thing.
bad
I've heard that F word before. You didn't say that. Free. So, I look at it this way. We've covered a lot of ground. And this has been great. Where else do we want to go with this question? As far as life goes, 20 more minutes, we can work. 5. We have 5 more minutes. But we can also say, hey, this was good. But if there's something else that any of the members of this group want to bring up, please, I would appreciate that.
Maybe just to kind of quick to put a point on the genetic testing. So, I think that there's, a couple scenarios. There's, scenarios, say like with art where, someone thinks about this person might have amyloidosis like Dr. Ferdinand did. And one part of that diagnosis is doing the genetic testing to confirm the disease. The second is, and you've kind of touched on it, is when someone does have this hereditary ATTR, what about other family members who have or potentially at risk? So, if someone has one copy of the TTR mutation, it means any first-degree relatives, so siblings and children, have a chance to have a mutation. And so, oftentimes when we do what's called cascade testing to look at those family members, many of them, if we do the initial testing and everything, they're asymptomatic, we can follow them over time. And if there's early amyloidosis, start a treatment. That's like the ideal scenario because, I believe, and, we still need more data, that if you start treatment at that stage, you can prevent this disease or significantly alter its course, right? But, that adoption of cascade testing is highly variable. There's sometimes you tell a patient about this and then, maybe there's 6 at-risk, for example, and none of them get genetic testing. There's other families, as soon as I tell them that, all of them get testing the next week.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with perceptions and education around genetic testing and what it is and what it means, layered on with, cultural and other factors and, viewpoints of healthcare. And so, what we, quickly see is that with that wide range of how people respond to it, we need to make sure we meet people where they are and tailor that message.
And that actually kind of just this whole like it's just I think the reminder, kind of the key messaging here. Those tetramers, those 4-part proteins, basically, they be unstable. But if you catch it early, there's a stabilizer that can be utilized to go in between those 4 units and stabilize that molecule so it doesn't break down, and then it doesn't accumulate. Key is the testing. You've got to catch it early so you can use what's currently available.
I think
the biggest piece
because
of
they got a couple of types of therapies out there now too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And that's why it's important. Like we said, I don't tell people what I'm doing as far as medication or anything, because that's a personal choice.
Absolutely.
And plus, that's between them and their healthcare doctor and all, and make that decision. Because me, till this day, we found out our doctor. I question him all the time. We questioned just a couple months ago. He had us take an MRI and just verify the reason why we're taking this therapy and all too. So, and like I said, that's a personal choice. Ain't none of our business.
Yep, 100%. But go get tested as a start. Yeah.
But in reality, no one's going to get tested if they don't know, right? So you got to start out there with awareness.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Anybody other thoughts? Anything else? I mean, this has been a great group of people, wonderful individuals. I thoroughly have learned a ton in working with each of you. And I really about the next steps where we're going to be able to right. I think, just in learning and speaking with all of you, we're in this because we want to make that difference. Mm-hmm. Healthcare, wellness is not an easy space. It's a lot of work, a dedication, and using your voice to make a difference is critical. So I'm just I'm very grateful, and I feel very blessed to be with you all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for your time. Go Ducks.
I'm split.
All right. That's a take.